live stream.
You peek.
We're all good. Well, again, good morning, everybody, and welcome. First off, Cedric, thank you and Cassandra for hosting us last night to another nice event.
Thank you.
Reporters.
Enjoyed everybody.
Yeah, we enjoyed it as well, and thank you. I know it's a lot to make that happen. Kate, welcome. This is your, even though you seem like a veteran at this particular point, given the number of meetings, this is actually physically your first actual. It's great to have you joining us here around the board. You'll see there's a lot of people in the room here. These are people who make it work and happen each and every day. And thank you all because you support us obviously during the board meetings and the committee meetings, but you also obviously do an awful lot of important work every day. So I want to thank all of you as well. You know, we have a pretty full agenda. We extended the meeting time a little bit this morning to give us a little more freedom, but we seem to overrun the first session here. So we're going to extend this a little bit here. One thing we will do this morning, though, is have a closed session. Solicitor General has been kind enough to join us actually to provide some of their views around some of the transgender issues about things. We're pretty pleased to have him join us. I'll do an appropriate introduction when we get to the closed session. But as you think about the 3 hours we have together, roughly, we could at least leave a half hour or so for the closed session. So that's the concept. So is there anything else anybody has before we ask the superintendent and the team to jump into any reviews? Anything else on anybody else's mind? Seeing none, then I think superintendent will just pass it to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all the board members, all the other folks, the staff that are here. Welcome you to the January board meeting of as the board president mentioned, we've got a pretty full day, and tomorrow the better part of the half a day to go through a number of topics just to bring everyone up to speed on how the institute is going. I would tell you that my assessment had a very, very good semester. A lot of things are trending very, very positively for the institute. The cadets are going through what we would normally expect to be a very, very challenging first year for the RATs, certainly in a lot of areas, both physically, academically, and then kind of learning and growing in this. And then obviously the other three classes, the thirds, seconds, firsts, are trying to either get good bearings on their academic studies along with the things that they have already become accustomed to, or are preparing as our first class to begin to think about that transition into becoming graduates of the Institute. We spend a lot of time talking about, during these board meetings, reviews of policies and procedures, looking at numbers and studying a lot of things. And certainly we give ample opportunity for leaders to come in and often talk to the board meetings and just kind of highlight for you the leadership roles that they play and the experiences that they're having. One of the things that we often don't talk about are the people who are behind the scenes who help make the Institute run. And so our communications and marketing team have started an initiative where we do connections, if you will, to highlight some of the work that's going on by other members of the staff. And so I'd like to show you this probably 1.5 to 2 long video, just talking about one particular area where we get some great support from some dedicated workers who are here at the Institute.
That was shot at VMI. When I first came here about 25 years ago, I started in the office, docking up in the tail shop. I've been here about 16, 17 years. We only work on us going a certain period of time, like we'll start with brown, certain fall. Overcoat. So he might not switch another overcoat until March. So it takes you about 3 years to get that process. You don't think about it. The tails on coats, you take 3 hours, and it's like a mind game. You have to figure out which piece goes to what when you take it apart. You literally take it apart, it's taken by threads, and then you have to put it all back together. The sewing of the wool is done on the machine, but then you put the lining back, you have to do that by hand. Then we also hand sew all the shoulders on the cotillion blouses. It's great to see what work's done, like when they go on their parades and stuff, and how nice they look in their uniforms. We critique it because we know what it's supposed to look like and whether or not they're what they should be, or we might even stop and say, hey, you really need to make things get them refitted, or your blouse is too tight, that you come out, well, if you want to get it fitted, you can very well. We really do, that's my goal, is to make them look really nice and professional. Sewing as an art is that, because there aren't any people who do it. So we're blessed that we can come in here and do this every day.
Well done. Brings a lot of memories back.
Just something to reflect on, just some of the many, many unique aspects of VMI as a military college, and some of the dedicated and talented folks that we have here to help us fulfill our mission. Go ahead. So I just want to talk very much in general terms to the board about a number of the things that have gone on in the past first semester. And then some of the executives are going to get up and talk more details about how we saw ourselves and how we performed this past semester and what we're looking forward to in the upcoming second semester. The highlights I want to do are reflective about the many things that involve all of the VMI family, to include parents, to alumni, to include those opportunities where we get to highlight the many accomplishments of our faculty, our staff, our workforce. As is the case every year, we had a real good turnout, an exceptional turnout for Family Weekend. Gives the parents, particularly the parents of the Rats, an opportunity to come back and see their cadet, get an opportunity to understand how their experience is going, the many challenges that they're facing, how they're adjusting to life at the institute. So we had that over the course of the first semester, somewhere around, I believe, the October timeframe. The annual leadership conference is in full swing. We've already had a number of guest speakers as a part of that program. Dave Gray and his team run an extraordinary program over there. We have a leader in residence this year, Brigadier General retired Chris Burns, who's already been to post a couple of times. He's already connected very well to the cadets, sharing experiences that he has had as a military leader, and as a leader now out in the civilian world, just to make sure that they understand that as they begin their transition, particularly for our first class cadet, what the real world looks like and the challenges that they'll face and the things that they'll have to bring to the table as part of a group of professionals in whatever institution they move into, whether it be the military, the corporate sector, the private sector, or if they go on and they pursue advanced education at another college. The Distinguished Service Award, we were very, very thrilled with the opportunity to present Mr. Conrad Hall, a long time, extremely dedicated alum, the Newmarket Medal. And we did that. The cadets had a great opportunity to hear him speak and to draw connections between his experience at VMI and his success out in the real world. Then ring figure, which also traditionally happens for our second class. This was the second year in a row that they returned the event to Crozet Hall. I'm sorry, not Crozet Hall. What am I thinking about? Cock Hall. Big difference. We returned, they returned back to Cock Hall to do the ring figure events, which allows for some of the ceremonial activities to be witnessed and participated in by their BRs and the other members of the class who were there, and the dates as well. The Summit on Free Speech. I was asked, along with many of the other college presidents, to participate in an event that was a part of the Governor's Higher Education Summit on Free Speech, to talk about expression, freedom of speech within higher education. The main reason I was asked was because they wanted to hear from VMI about how we're approaching free speech and free expression within the context of a military college as part of the public higher education system here in the Commonwealth. And along with that, my comments were centered around a new program that came to me by way of some of our faculty as a recommendation to use a particular format in debates that was centered around how you conduct civil debates. And so there's a national organization called Braver Angels. They run a Braver Angels debate format that was the brainchild of one of our faculty in our ACB department, Colonel Valentina Dmitriev-Grazel, and one of our administrators over in the Center for Leadership and Ethics, Lieutenant Colonel Kim Conley, and then finally Colonel Sarah Whipple, who was in our psychology department. And they came to me proposing an idea that would allow us to have a debate series that was conducted here at the Institute, but to build it under this format. And so that's how they moved out to organize this thing. There have been a number of formats that exist out there, but certainly we wanted to embrace one where it's had the opportunity to come in, have civil discussions, hear differences in opinions and different viewpoints, but also walk away from those sessions having learned something. And so a number of topics have occurred since we started this program. It was started last year, second semester, I believe, and then this year we've already been off and running on it. Some of the topics that have been discussed in this format have been women in combat. There was a real good session, and this was the first one that I personally attended and really got to put my eyes on this thing. And this was one about the cadet athlete, non-athlete divide, which was well attended and a very, very spirited debate on both sides. But I think cadets certainly learned a lot. The banning of books K through 12 was one of the big topics that took place. Impacts of social media. And the last one we did was really what gave me an opportunity to speak to the group up in Charlottesville on UVA's campus. And it was one that asked the question, is diversity, equity, and inclusion possible without civility? That one as a format was extremely unique for VMI because not only did it involve the participation of members of the Corps of Cadets, we also had participation from students from Washington and Lee University. We had participation from students from Southern Virginia University, and we had participation from students from Mountain Gateway. All very unique colleges, all colleges with very, very different cultures, different backgrounds. But it was a great opportunity for them to come together and really kind of talk about things and add points and counterpoints about their viewpoints as it related to this particular topic. Shifting to the next picture up there, you see our
We're gonna have a chance to see at lunch, I think, still, aren't we? The Brave
Yes.
Angels, and Valentina will be there for that.
Yes, they will come in and they'll do a briefing during the lunch period to the board members, just kind of talk in more detail about what that program is all about.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, sorry. No, I appreciate you letting me remind me. Ranger Challenge for the second year in a row. We have won the regional competition, the 1st Brigade competition, which qualifies our Ranger Challenge team for participation in the Sandhurst Military Skills Competition, which is the national best ranger competition that often involves active duty, reserve component, and even other services best ranger teams. This is the second year that we won it regionally. Last year, our team, after winning it regionally, went and competed and finished 5th place among all the contestants. And our team was one of the younger teams that competed in the competition. So with more experience, with more of a veteran team, we're counting on them to do a little bit better. They've been working real hard over the past semester in preparation for that competition, getting in shape, working on the various different skills to get trained. And so we're looking for them to make a great showing. And then the last picture just highlights, again, just one of the many cadets that are doing tremendous things across the board as a student here, as a member of the Corps Cadets, as a military leader in the Corps, and also as a student leader. And that's Cadet Kate Taylor, who is our Chief of Staff for the regiment. She was the recipient of the 3-legged stool. So many of our cadets are doing a number of other things at a high level. We've had a number of cadets that were recognized by the Southern Conference for academic achievement based on not only what they're doing on the field of competition, but also what they're doing in the classroom. We've had a number of our student athletes that were recognized with Player of the Week honors, specifically a number of our members of our football team, as well as a few members of our basketball and swim teams. Our coach, first-year coach, Danny Rocco, was a National Coach of the Year finalist. And as we like to talk about, and as I like to show in my pictures all the time, we are the recipient of the Shako. So we own Silver Shako. Two times in the last 4 years, VMI has won the Silver Shako by defeating the Citadel. And so I have to go back a long time to see. And that, as I've described to the athletic director, is at least one bowl game that we'll participate in every year. That's how I feel like we need to approach it. And then based on performance, we might get other bowl opportunities. Christmas holiday celebrations took place with the band and the Glee Club led by John Brody, who is set to retire here at the end of this academic year. And it always gives them an opportunity to get out and represent the Institute to show people kind of the very, very uniqueness, but the quality of the young men and women that we produce. And then we had graduation ceremony where I spoke. John Adams was on slate, but took ill, unfortunately. And then I got thrown into the breach, but it was
Great job.
It was a memorable event for those cadets. 35 graduates, 4 were distinguished graduates, 5 graduated with distinction, and then 9 were graduates who commissioned that day in the United States Army. And we had as our commissioning officer Major General Promotable Christopher Leneve, who was formerly the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division. He's en route to be the 8th Army commander over in Korea. And then Joe and Shannon, they're going to come in and they're going to talk in more detail about how we see ourselves from an admissions standpoint and financial standpoint. As you all are aware, the recruited numbers and our matriculation numbers returned back more to normal this past year, where we brought in 491 cadets, having set a goal of 450 for the number that we were going to bring in. For this year's class that's coming in August, the new goal is 495. Joe and Shannon will talk in detail, but right now, everything points to a very, very strong recruiting class for this upcoming year. Applications, appointments, and deposits are all nearly 2 times the number they were compared to this time last year. Of the current appointments that have occurred, the average GPA is sitting around 3.79. We've still got a ways to go, and that will normalize somewhat. But that's the indications of strong applicants and appointments that are going out certainly reflect that we are looking at and evaluating the quality of where they sit. That's largely impacted by, for the second year, the work that we're doing with the Call to Duty Scholarship. To date, we have 109 applications that have come in. We've awarded 11 Call to Duty scholarships, 9 to out-of-state cadets who will come to VMI with a 3 or 4 year ROTC scholarship, 2 for in-state. That obviously does not happen unless we have the strong support from our alumni, which we do, and we greatly appreciate it. One of the other things that I've talked about to the executive committee was a new initiative that we started based on being approached by a group of alum, class of 1974, I believe, Guy Conti and Ronnie Norman. And it's a program called Pass and Review. And so what they came and proposed was a more defined program built around the 50-year reunion classes to have them come in and interact, act as mentors, so to speak, every class that's in barracks, but at that 50-year level. So it starts with that cohort that comes in during matriculation, where representation from that 50-year class would be present to be introduced as a part of that class. And then there's about 6 touch points that occur over the 4-year period where the 50-year class is involved in a number of activities. One of the big things that we wanted to emphasize with them was the role that all classes, but certainly the 50-year class, could play in the recruitment of cadets and their participation in new cadet recruiting events that take place working through the chapters of the Alumni Association. And so they're on board with that. We're looking forward to seeing how that program manifests itself. If you look on this chart, you see some of the events that would occur for each successive class in those touch points throughout the course of the year. And so we're looking forward to that. We're very, very excited about that. And I think that they're very excited about that as well. Next, strategic plan implementation. We briefed the board, obviously, and got their approval from the board. And I appreciate the board's approval on the strategic plan. And so the next step, or the next phase of work that we had to do, was begin to identify the set of metrics that were going to be used to measure our progress towards the end states identified in those 5 initiatives. And also to assign stakeholders. So we've assigned a set of co-leads to lead the definition and the defining of the specified and implied tasks associated with those goals and objectives within each of those initiatives. And as I promised, in May, we'll be able to show the board what those measurements will be and how we will track them very closely so that we're tracking progress within the strategic goal and how those things are spaced out over a continuum of time over the next 10 years to get after the things that we talk about in the area of academic excellence, esprit de corps, the work that's going on that's consistent with the value talk about in the strategic plan as well. The other thing that Jim will talk about during the athletic committee meeting is direction that I've given for the standing up and the establishment of an athletics task force. I've talked a number of times about my view with respect to competing to win. And again, it goes back to a time when I was a cadet. It goes back to a time when many of our alum were cadets, particularly those that were cadets here in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where there was an emphasis on the spirit of competition among our athletic programs. But we're not going to be able to get there if we don't take a real hard look at where we sit right now and where we stand and what we need going forward and how we define athletics, the value of athletics for the institute. And so what I'm looking to do is form this task force, which is going to be a small team, and they're going to be focused on these things. The end state is that they're going to come back to me with a set of recommendations for decision that's going to chart the path forward for athletics. We can talk about, and we'll certainly talk about during the athletic committee meeting, kind of the state of play of athletics right now with respect to the finances and the work that's been done to correct that. But what we really need to be thinking about is the long-term prospects of athletics for VMI, and how we position ourselves, and how we understand the value proposition of athletics, and then what resources are required so that we have quality coaches, we have quality teams, and that the student athlete experience is one that our student athletes can appreciate, and understand why they decided to come to a school like VMI and be able to showcase their talents within that experience, all while focusing on being good student athletes, members of the core, committed to being the best ambassadors that the Institute has, with all the outreach and all the external representation that they do. So they'll be on the timeline once we get this stood up, and we're in the very, very early stages of this. They'll be on a timeline where I'd like to see a report with the recommendations somewhere within 6 to 7 months. So sometime in the summer, we're looking to do that. I've already talked to Damon about this effort. I've talked to the KeyDeg Club board president as well. Danny, you're in here? He's not? Okay. I've talked to him as well about standing this up, and they are committed to supporting legislative engagement. We are like right in the throes of the legislative cycle. The new legislature, which has had a pretty significant amount of turnover, is in session right now. We've already had meetings up in Richmond this past week, and I'll return back up next week to go talk to additional members of the legislature. We've also had a number of members of not only the administration, but also the legislature here on post to take a tour and kind of understand what's going on, what VMI is, how VMI is a unique institution, how it's a valued institution that produces quality young men and women. So you have a picture here of Secretary of Finance, Steve Cummings, who came to visit Post. We've also had Delegate Ellen Campbell, who's come to Post, as well as Delegate Terry Austin. And so we're going to continue to have those engagements. We have a set of priorities that we've laid out for them that we are looking to get legislative support. I think over the past few years, it's safe to say that we've got a tremendous amount of support that continues to occur with the legislature, and we need to continue to work on and build those relationships. Next. Just a couple of other recognitions that I want to highlight are some of the work. Again, I talk about a lot of great things that are happening here on Post. Some of the recognitions that are happening to our faculty. So during the Citadel game, we had the opportunity to recognize one member of our faculty and one member of our staff. The picture shows Colonel Jeff Kendrick. And then Miss Michelle Murphy. They were recognized for the work that they're doing, not only with cadets, but within the community by the SOCON. That's the SOCON Commissioner Dr. Cross presenting the award to Jeff in that picture. We've entered into a new partnership through an admissions agreement with Valley Forge Military Academy. I had the opportunity to go up there and talk to their president and talk to their leadership and meet some of their cadets, a number of whom are interested in attending VMI, a couple of whom have already submitted applications to attend VMI next class. This is the second partnership that we've entered into, and it gives us an opportunity to tap into some of these military schools that have a framework that is somewhat similar to VMI. A number of them have a strong foundation in their version of an honor code. And so the opportunity for us to bring in good quality young men and women who can come to VMI and just get through a good, strong educational experience, have a propensity to serve, in a number of different ways. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we're continuing to look for as we recruit. We've had a number of visits by distinguished visitors. During the Citadel game weekend, we had the director of the Secret Service, Director Cheadle. She came and visited the post, brought some of her staff with her. It just so happens that she brought some of her staff that were graduates of VMI, but also some of her graduates that were graduates of the Citadel. And so we went through a series of briefings. They all attended the basketball game against the Citadel. We did make sure we sat the Citadel folks down on the far end of the court, and we gave the prime seats to the director and the VMI graduates that were part of her group that attended. And then yesterday, we had the Swedish Chief of Defense Staff. He came, had an office call with me, had lunch with myself, some of the faculty and staff, and met with a number of cadets. And then he spoke to about 200 plus cadets about the Swedish Defense Staff and how they're growing and what the world looks like, particularly from a national strategic standpoint. And that was a great visit. So he showed some interest in the possibility of sending international students to VMI. And so that might be something that we'll be exploring here in the near future. Okay. With that, I'm going to stop and ask both Joe and Shannon to come up, subject to any questions by any board members.
Comments? Keep moving then, I think, Cedric.
Okay. Joe, Shannon?
Over to tables. That's not nerve-wracking to get closer. Good morning. Michelle, how are you? No, you're good. So just touching briefly, I'll kind of start and then pass over to Joe specific for admission. But in terms of enrollment management, looking at the recruitment and the retention, right? The goal is to help get quality cadets here, help them financially while they're here through the financial aid process, and then also help ultimately get them to graduate, right? After that, we want them to get good jobs, the workforce, commission, whatever that might be. So things we're working on right now, since this is still kind of a new rollout with this, improving that cross-departmental conversations and kind of figuring out what's going on in each department so we can better collaborate, right? And figure out where holes are, pain points are, what's working really well. Trying to just do that to improve that organizational efficiency. So right now what I see is we have to really determine what our objectives and our metrics are through kind of a phased approach, right? So I'm coordinating with department heads, just trying to get on there. I didn't want to bombard them the first week back for classes. So get with and figuring out what's happening on the academic side. I want their take as well from an academic piece. Excuse me. Compiling the retention data, it's kind of all over the place. So we really want to put that in easy to track, get some predictive analytics so we can kind of see where they're going, what data is going to be used and best to help us determine the retention rates, right, that we have. And then that Pell Initiative, of course, it's now being called the SPI. That's from Chev, so the Chev Pell Initiative. So if you hear SPI, that's kind of the new acronym, another one to learn. But with that also, that allows us to have those positions to help with retention, specific to Pell eligible students, but we also want to look at this holistically across post. So how can we utilize those positions to help in the Miller Academic Center and then also help not just our Pell students, but all of our students and retain them. All of this is going to come down to changes with software, changes with our processes, other initiatives that Joe and I have already put in place over the last year. We're going to continue to develop, evolve on those and kind of work through that. Part of that you've already heard last year ad nauseum, we talked about the CRM. Joe's going to allude to that a little bit. We've seen a lot of success just with that, but then also. And then from a financial aid standpoint, talk about this more because I'm sure there's questions. But having a financial aid contractor come in, a lot of that we've alluded to with wins is it's a manual process, everything that we're doing. It is seriously file one at a time. The system can do this in an automated way. I know how to do that. I don't have the time to set it up. So as a post-wide effort, having a contractor come in and helping us fix that, but also to improve the communications out of just the financial aid office. And those are just the two pieces from the recruitment standpoint. We're still building out, at least my point of view, the retention piece too, because there's a lot of coordination across posts. That's Miller Academic Center, that's faculty and department heads, it's the commandant staff. There's a lot of pieces that have to go into this. And then working with the dean on programs and all of that. So it's a lot of data gathering right now. I'm hoping to report to you and have some metrics, ideas, and kind of where we're going to go with this too. There's no questions. I know we're on a time limit. I'm going to pass it to Joe to talk.
And because it's very important, actually, as
Please, yes.
and I think it sounds like though, the technology support and software is not, you don't feel like that's been a constraint, and or there's packages out there that we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Correct. So we have to look at the software that we have. What can it do? I'm a firm believer in using the software that we have and see if we can't be better efficient in using that. But sometimes we're going to have to look at software that does more than what we currently have. So for example, retention software. There is stuff out there that can, from the onset, before help us determine their predictive measures on their success. So then we can have provisions and policies in place and a plan to help them. We say, hey, we know that you might struggle down this path. We're going to set you up from day one on a path that's going to help you be successful. Not just your rat year, let's get you back for your third class year. Okay, you did great. Let's get you through that second class year and let's get you across the stage. That's the software that I'm looking at. That's more of a holistic approach, combines all the efforts across posts because this really is a post-wide effort. And then what we'll do with that is be able to look at the metrics, kind of figure out where we're at. Trying to get the data right now, it's a little all over the place. So, but we have to use what we have, and then I have great support in the software that we need to help go forward. I hope I answer your question.
Very much so. Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Slide. Yeah, so I know we're pressed for time, so I just want to hit some highlights here on updates and highlights in the admissions office and what we've been able to accomplish over the last few months. So obviously with admissions technology, the biggest thing was getting both the CRM Element 451 and the Common App up and running. Organizational change is hard, and doing too much is often challenging. But doing both at the same time was out of necessity to be able to get back up our application numbers and ultimately bring back up our matriculate numbers. We'll go down to the recruitment and yield section. I just want to highlight that over Thanksgiving and winter furlough, we had 126 cadets help out with our recruiting efforts, and they went to 116 high schools. So happy to report that. We had a yearly target with reshifting and repurposing some positions and admissions to focus solely on recruiting. We had a target of 225 events that we wanted to meet, right? Whether those were high school visits, national fairs, regional fairs, whatever have you. Please report between 1 July and 31 December, we actually attended 297 recruiting events. So with what we have on the books now for the spring, we're going to look to be somewhere around 350, 375 for the cycle. So that kind of perks my interest in terms of how can we even maybe push that number further for next year as we continue to grow and expand the VMI value proposition to all parts of the country, not just in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Looking ahead, open house numbers look solid. I know those two in March, the book week. I'll explain a little bit more why we anticipate those to jump up rather quickly when we talk about applicants and what we're seeing. As General Wynn spoke about earlier, we have a new admissions agreement with the Valley Forge Military Academy. I don't know if I mentioned it back in September, but we also signed a guaranteed admissions agreement with Oak Ridge Military Academy in Oak Ridge, North Carolina. We've had 3 or 4 visits down there already. A lot of interest from their cadets that want to come to VMI. Working with the alumni agencies on a volunteer leadership conference. So we have great alumni support to help in the recruiting space, and we want to sustain that. But what we want to try to do is standardize what that looks like. So making sure that alumni feel supported, they have the resources that they need, and they're comfortable to go out. They can speak about the Institute all day long. But we want to make sure that they're prepared and they're confident and they're ready to go. So that is coming up on 22-23 March. So we're in the process of scheduling that and working through logistics with the agencies. Skipping down to marketing. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, what you see on the thing, but I think I want to kind of circle back to the charge that I was given to when I started. 30 days, have a plan, have a 5-year plan and build that out. But at the same time, assess their existing infrastructure and take a look at, okay, what's the return on investment currently doing and where do we need to shift or where do we need to pivot? And so result of that effort, we ended a 17-year relationship with a vendor that provided enrollment marketing services for the Institute. What I'm pleased to say and provide an update on is for about $15,000 less, we are now getting sophomore junior search in terms of trying to get students in Virginia and nationally interested in VMI. We're getting senior search. We're getting senior admit yield in terms of driving those seniors to apply and then ultimately deposit, as well as parent append, which is matching parent data using various national resources with students in our funnel to ultimately engage them in the admissions process, or for about $15,000 less than what we were getting for just sophomore junior search with our last vendor. So very, very excited about that. The details and the data show that, those efforts are working. And so it looks like it's a relationship that we're going to continue with for years to come. And then have some open positions in admissions, some that we just haven't filled because we've been able to shift some dues around to provide some budget savings. There's a few positions that we're looking to repurpose based on needs of the department and the Institute for next year to focus more on enrollment marketing. Some more to come on that, but and then also while Mary Noe is out on maternity leave, Dominique Blum is our POC for recruiting within the office. Next slide, please. Real quick, with the increase of applications from the Common App and making it easier to apply through the VMI app, we've been tracking applications throughout the entire cycle. And so what we wanted to do is take a look at, it was the last day before winter furlough. We wanted to see kind of historically where we were at that point in time and how that compared with the last 10, 11 years. So not a whole lot to say here other than the last day before winter furlough. VMI had more submitted applications than it had at that point in time than the last 11 years. Next slide, please. So what do we look like right now for the RAPMAS 2025+3? So we set a goal of 16,600 inquiries. We've exceeded that goal. We're almost at 17,000 and counting for the year. And you can see the point in time comparison in parentheses below each data point. And you can see the breakdown with gender lines, residency, things of that nature. Applications, all stages, so those that are incomplete are currently submitted. We have 2,672. The point in time comparison to last year was 996. We have 1,570 applications, and actually that number as of this morning is closer to 1,590. Our yearly goal was 1,500. Last year we ended the cycle at 1,221. And you can see the breakdown there. With conditional appointments, we have 1,007 with 146 files left to review. The rest of those applications are in processing right now, so they may be missing a document or two, but we have workflows set up, what I referred to last year's Lost Point campaigns to drive those folks to take that next step. Currently, we have 123 deposits. So we have 123 folks that have paid their $300 deposit, and out of those 123, 45 are actually full reservations to the Institute. So we know with the class of 495, and that's our target, right? All the indicators look positive. But with the class of 495, you obviously have melt in the summer where students that deposit cancel and they don't show up. So we're looking for a class of 495. We need to be somewhere around 555, 560 deposits because we know that we're going to get about 60 or so to ultimately decide not to show up. All right, next slide, please. Sir.
Question, where do we stand with, what's the acceptance rate looking like?
Right. So I'll if you can hold on just for a few minutes. Yeah, we'll talk about that on the next slide. But the Cliff Notes is it's looking to come down. Yes, sir.
Pretty significant number increase in the last year. What do you attribute that to?
I think the change in strategy in terms of how we identify students that may have an interest in attending VMI. We focused a lot of our efforts, both in the college search space and the recruiting space, on students that have an interest in maybe one of our competitors, that VMI isn't on their radar, that's helped us out nationally. I think West Point moving to the ComEd has helped us out as well as getting quality applicants that are also at the same time as applying to West Point, checking a box for SMCs. So that's helped. It's also the unknowns of this admission cycle, where in many ways we're establishing a baseline. I'll talk more about it in a little bit to Eddie's question, but a lot of the literature and the research that's out there in terms of the impact of the Common App on your public institutions, senior military colleges are really bucking that trend, right? So you can kind of throw a lot of that out the window. With that said, we do have some data that we can point to, and we can make predictions about where we're going to land. But I think those are probably the primary reasons as to why. I think not having an application fee, right? We entered into a 4-year pilot program with support from Chev, with our Chev Pell Grant Initiative, or what's the acronym now?
SPI.
SPI. That's what we do in higher ed. We use acronyms. Because of SPI, we have a 4-year pilot program that we've implemented to eliminate the application fee to try to increase access. And so by doing so, we want to kind of assess, how many more applications come in. I think all those factors together have played a role.
This is your first full year in this position.
Yes, sir.
So you were kind of predicting that this was your goals last year when you came in October. So I would attribute that, your experience and now being here on the first full year to contribute largely as well.
Yes.
If I might add also, I would say improving the application itself. We knew it was clunky, it was kind of cumbersome and had some issues. When you fix the application itself, you're seeing less people leave it, halfway through or whatever, because it is now easier for them to complete it.
Yeah. And
Legacy and military families, do you keep those statistics?
we do. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The call to duty program continues to work well.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
A little bit better than last. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the interest is there. We continuously get lists from our friends over in the ROTC departments, and we are reaching out to them, not only from my department, but we built out workflows, our enrollment marketing out in our CRM, where we are reaching out to them and driving them to complete that application. And then that data comes back in from Shannon and her team. So that way, if they've already applied, they don't get a second communication. We work that pretty closely, almost on a daily basis. Yes, sir.
I'm going to monkey with your plan a little bit, because I know it's still relatively new, but we had 491 matriculants this year. So our goal this year is 495, which is basically steady state. Is there maybe an unwritten aspiration to go ahead and hit 515 this year?
I think right now it's still too early to tell. I mean, all the indicators that we look at with applications and then all the indicators for deposits, right? The early decision deposit deadline is 15 February. I think 89% of deposits right now are early deposits. We still have 130 that haven't deposited yet, right? So while we're ahead, there's still a lot of unknowns. And I think this goes to Tay's question earlier. I'll touch on a little bit now. Because West Point went on, added the Common App. One of the things that we're seeing is a lot of what we call ghost applicants. So these are academically qualified young people. They have an interest in this type of environment, but we don't know a whole lot about them. They've never visited posts. Their mother or father didn't go to VMI. Don't have any relatives. And so right now, that's the unknown. I'll talk a little bit more about one of our competitors and the year's worth of data that's publicly available for anybody to look at. Their common data set in terms of after one full year of the Common App, how it trended. And I think that's probably the best thing that we can point to right now, even though I would say that we have a much stronger value proposition than our friends in Charleston. It's something that we can point to make predictions about where we're going to land. Next slide, please. All right. So I think it's important to take a look at consumer demand, student demand when they're applying. This is just a breakdown as of 18 January of those that submitted their application, what they are applying for. Doesn't necessarily mean that they were appointed to that major. When students apply to VMI, they have to select a first major and a second major, and based on interest, based on the quality of applicants for that major, they may get their first choice or they may get their second choice. But I think that's just important to track. Nothing surprising here. Last year, those majors that you see at the top were at the top, and I think that's been the case for some time now, but I think it's just important to see that. The breakdown, if you will, with liberal arts, STEM, and engineering, 45% liberal arts, 28% STEM, and 27% of applications for one of our engineering majors. Next slide, please. So senior admit yield. I don't want to go through everything. A lot of top of mind communication that drive those seniors to apply. The first time that we're doing this, we actually have personalized microsites for appointed students. Once they've been appointed, they have a personal web page that they go to with their name, their major, and some of the elements of that web page. We're calling it their personalized barracks bound site. They have a button that drives them to their next step, which is at first to deposit and create their post-view account. It's a dynamic site. So once that status and colleague comes back to the CRM and they become a partial reservation, now their next step is to complete their medicals. And then once their status changes to reservation, it comes back. Now their next step is to register for STP once that opens, right? So it's a dynamic site that really guides them ultimately to matriculation in August. There is an academic planner. What we did is we pulled the academic plans that are in the college catalog and we built them out. So that way there's a 4-year map for people to see based on their appointed major, what they're going to take. And that can help facilitate questions. We have some career information and salaries for the major that they selected. There's a location explorer, although I don't know how much they'll be doing that in their rat year, but to learn a little bit more about the Lexington community. And then parents are also driven to this site as well, so they can know kind of more about Lexington, Virginia. And then one thing that I'm excited about is the, and I don't know, oh, it's over on the left, I'm sorry, Connect with the Cadet. So kind of what we have with inside VMI, which we've discontinued for some cost savings. We have now Connect with the Cadet. So I have 6 cadet assistants that help me out in admissions. What appointed students can do now, if they have a question about X, Y, or Z, they can click a button that goes to a Microsoft form which is monitored by those 6 cadets, and they respond within 24 hours to try to answer those questions, right? So it's a pretty neat setup, but it's something that isn't new. But it's something that we're bringing back, but hopefully we're bringing it back in a more efficient manner. And then finally, we did this last year, but we're going to turn it over to our enrollment marketing firm to do a enrolled, not enrolled survey to learn a little bit more about consumer behavior in terms of why young people choose VMI and why they made the decision to matriculate. Those that didn't, to also learn why not. We're tracking that right now. We've had a few folks that have said, you know, they want to be at the beach, so more power to them. And then we talked about Jordan's Point and Buena Vista Beach and all the places around here, and just really couldn't compare. But we're turning that over to our enrollment marketing firm, but we're going to watch it closely so we can continue to make adjustments and pivot if we need to. Next slide, please. Yes, ma'am.
I recall last year there was an effort on the yield piece. There were texting cadets and carrying through, or admitted cadets and carrying through until the summer. Are we still doing that effort, or was that a one-time?
Yes, ma'am. So what we did is we didn't have texting capabilities last year. So we purchased Mongoose Cadence, which is a popular platform that's used in higher ed. It was a 1-year contract. It was to get us through. The CRM has texting capabilities. So when we're sending out those emails, our enrollment marketing firm uses our platform. They send them out on our behalf. They use that texting feature as well. So we've established cadence. If you look at that inverted triangle, those loss points between each stages, we have emails and text messages going out to not just students, but parents as well, to drive them to take that next step. So the projection of where we're going to land. And this was presented back in September. But want to just kind of highlight, you know, we met our target on inquiries, which is difficult to do. It's becoming more difficult to do enrollment cliff that it will hit next year. So I'm happy about that. Last year, we ended the year at 121 apps. We're 100 apps right now, so we've met our target there. So, Mr. Godwell, to your question earlier, right now, we are moving closer to our targeted goal of 1,100. I think General Wynn said it earlier that the average GPA is a 3.79. Only 17 students that have been appointed have a GPA less than a 3.0. Of those that have deposited the 123, which I think is now 127, only one has a GPA less than a 3.0. A very strong academic strong class. But that's why the next 8 weeks are so critical, because we are going to have a wait list. Our wait list is, we will send out notifications. We've actually turned down 31. We deferred 89 from the fall because we want to see more from them. So we will have a wait list with 146 still left in the hopper. We feel confident. We have a high level of confidence that we're going to hit our target. If application volume continues to come in at the same rate, and we exceed our initial target of 1,500 to 1,800, and yield in terms of deposits received continue to come in at the same rate, then that allows us to be a little bit more selective, and then that wait list grows. That wait list grows from potentially 50 to 60 now to 150, 200, where come March 1, we send out a communication to those that we offer a spot on the wait list to. There'll be a survey. They'll have to affirm, yes, I accept the spot on the wait list. I understand what this means. If I've offered an appointment, I withdraw my applications from other institutions, or no, I don't. And they also have to affirm that they understand what that means. If I don't want to be put on the wait list, I'm going to be turned down, right? So that will go out around March 1, and then that will allow us to, I think we said April 1st was going to be the due date. And then we'll start looking at if there's a need to pull kids off of the wait list, we'll do so about that time. With the projections that we made back really last October, and we reaffirmed them back in September, the acceptance rate for this year, we were looking at 73%. So that's a reduction from 81%, right? Here's why I say 495 to 12, and there's a lot of unknown. So looking at our friends to the south, 1 year's worth of Common App data, they saw a 28% increase in applications. That's 630 more applications from last year previously. Their acceptance rate stayed about the same, 98.6% to 98. Right? So
if we can sit it down.
yes, sir. Maybe they're not friends. I don't know.
Did you just say the acceptance rate was 98?
Their acceptance rate 2 years ago was 98.6, and then last year was 98. So they saw a 28% increase in applications, but they still kept their acceptance rate high. What is concerning and something that we're tracking on a daily basis and often multiple times per day, because that's just how my brain operates, is that the yield dropped from 30.6% to 24%. So they matriculated actually one more freshman last year than they did in the year. So again, we have a much stronger value proposition. Students that when we talk to, and they understand that VMI is much more selective, right? We're not rolling admission. We have an early decision, regular decision period, and then we're rolling after the February 1st. But right now, with a lot of the unknowns, with a lot of those ghost applicants, I want to exercise caution and be conservative in terms of 495 is the target. So, but as we continue to move throughout the cycle, again, if things progress at the same rates and yield progresses at the same rates, then that we may see that acceptance rate come down even further to 70, maybe possibly back into the 60s and kind of get ahead there. So
reaching, Joe, that number of 495, you're kind of pegging that against a yield of what? Now,
5%.
5%.
Last year we're at 50%. And the reason why I say that is, right, because again, you can look at the data, research, all the literature about Common App 4-year publics. In year one, you see a 15% increase in applications. We have exceeded that. Citadel exceeded, Norwich exceeded that, right? And I think it's because we're unique, right? This is a different type of environment. And so when you're targeting young people that want this type of experience, you're probably not, you're going to see more applications. But on the same hand, as competition stiffens, and we know now that we never really competed directly with Texas A&M. It was more so north and south with the Citadel, but now we are competing with Texas A&M with students that are applying on college search platforms up from like 26 to number 3 on CapEx, on College Raptor, and all these platforms that we're plugged into. There's just a lot of unknowns right now. So, but with the volume that we have a high level of confidence that we're going to hit our targeted number of appointments. We're going to hit, we've exceeded that, our targeted number of matriculants at 495. We've been able to bring the acceptance rate down. Sir. Whoever.
No, you go.
So how many rats have we lost through Christmas and how are they doing academically?
So I would probably defer to.
So we're on pace. We've lost about the same number of rats that we historically have. Don't quote me on that, please.
I've got the number.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I was gonna do that. So, we matriculated 91.
Right.
It's 490 with the readmit. And 451 completed the fall semester. Got 436 right now. I think 490. So, we're in the upper 80%.
Do we have any hard data on say the top 5 reasons why they want to come here?
Why folks are choosing to come here?
Yeah.
We do. We do. I mean, we ask that. I think there's interest in commissioning. I don't see as much interest in terms of or much response about folks saying, you know, I'm not sure if I want to commission or not, or I don't want to commission, but I want this type of experience. It boils down to major. It boils down to commissioning. Sometimes it's because of that prior. A lot of conversation about athletics, aspiration to play D1 athletics as well. So what we didn't have, I mean, I think that's something that our office has always had. I think what we didn't have last year was the reasons why they chose not to come.
I think it's really powerful. You know, when I'm talking to kids that are prospective, you know, potentially prospective cadets or their parents, one of the things I throw out is just our unbelievable success rate in terms of employment. Mm-hmm. And you know, it might be something to build in the formula in terms of recruiting and marketing and selling, because you know, these are tough times economically, and it's a pretty compelling argument.
A lot of our new marketing materials are marketing collateral. We do talk a lot about the 99% graduate rate in terms of being employed or 6 months. We talk about our, you know, being number 1 in the country for return on investment, the number 4 ranked public liberal arts college of the country. So those things are being pushed. I think we probably hear more of that from mom and dad as opposed to the student themselves. Sure. But yes, definitely very important.
So one of the additional things that we do for houses is talk to parents about the affordability of VMI. And so it's always about, hey, you know, parents are going to look at what it's going to cost, and that sticker price can, you know, kind of turn folks off initially. But when we have the conversation about the amount of financial aid that's available that they could be eligible for, talk about the Merit Scholars Program. Many colleges have Merit Scholar programs, but just kind of how we have kind of retooled that effort to as a resource for finances for students. We talk about the call to duty. All those things are intentional to really signal the affordability of VMI.
One sort of question and one thought. The thought, I think you referred to them as ghost applicants. Was that the phrase you used? Yes. That's fine. That's like one of the most interesting and I think positive things I've heard about the whole Common App process, because, and I know I beat this drum all the time, but if we're getting access, right, to kids who may have a proclivity to come and to do this, but they just don't know us because their parents didn't come here. They're not from Virginia geographically. They don't know the VMI story. And I know I bang this drum all the time. We have this incredible story that we have to get out. To me, the opportunity of that group of kids who are looking at West Point, but also check us, but don't really know us, I would just encourage you, and I know you've got a million things on your plate, limited abilities, but that's a group we should really explore and try to educate really. Because those, to me, that's the future and the horizon and the expansion of our getting who we are out in a more broad way. So I think that's great. Then my question, and I don't know if it's for you or Bob, but how are we doing on Institute scholars and sort of are we getting a good crop of?
Yes, we haven't selected them yet, but applications are what they would be normally. So normally we get for merit scholar program, for honors program, 150 apps or apps to that. It's early in the game, but I think we're trending. You all admissions, right, screens out. I think we've turned over to academics this year, the actual screening of those, but you're passing on the ones that hit the.
That feels like it's
hit the mark quantitatively, and then there's a committee of honors committee faculty that review those. So I think we're trending.
We are, yes, sir.
Last time.
Mr. Adams, I would just add just to your question or your thought. So that's one of the reasons why, like in the lead generation space, I talked a lot about, having organic inquiries last year as opposed to paid or inquiries that you purchase, right? And College Board and all these other websites. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We know that not everybody knows about VMI. So that's why we create lookalike lists where we want to, in Virginia, we would try to get as many Virginian names as possible into our funnel. But we look, strategically about, where we have historically pulled cadets from, and then areas where we think there's an opportunity. And then we go into those areas and we try to purchase the names of folks that are interested in VMI, but then also interested in one of our competitors. So we have a list of all the federal service academies, all the SMCs, junior military colleges, big ROTC programs. And then that's how we strategically purchase names out of state to get them into the funnel, share the VMI story, the value proposition, and hopefully drive them to apply. So, yes, sir.
Those cadets we admitted that were not, let's say, above the 2.5 average, do we have any indication how they're doing?
Bob is going to be able to speak to that.
Okay, all right, okay, I didn't know if that was right, okay.
If there are no further, sir.
22% female applicants, that seems higher than normal, or is it?
It is higher than normal, yes. And at this point in time, in terms of the percentage of deposits, going back to this slide, 19% are female. Initial appointment is 22%. Yes, sir.
No question. I just want to. Y'all kind of came into a very difficult situation. Those many hot button issues that had to be navigated. And every time we sit here at each board meeting, I guess I'm a little bit more impressed by how much detail and how much energy y'all have put into this. And for me, looking at those numbers and also going back further to pre-pandemic, because I see the work. And I think the work is right there in black and white. So I just wanted to kind of, like I said, say that publicly. Like I said, I don't want y'all to feel like the energy y'all put behind this goes unnoticed.
I appreciate it.
Second that.
A lot of people in this room that have helped out. And I know you walk down the row and you visit some of those offices on the left-hand side. There's pretty damn, pardon my language, pretty damn good people that are working their tails off and continue to do so, right? So whole damn team.
Hagee, to that point, given the enrollment cliff we're facing and the vacancies that you've got in your department, you have the resources you need to sustain this effort. Is it sustainable? I know you guys have been working so hard.
So I think in the interim, yes. I know there were some national recommendations in terms of staffing levels, NACAC in terms of the admissions officer applicant ratio. For academic advisors, it's 300 to 1. NACADA makes that recommendation, and 250 to 1 is a best practice. So I think we're going to have to look at how we shift some things around as demand continues to increase, how we can meet that. Because, I mean, this, I've heard, one of the biggest things that I'm still learning, but I hear about, since I've started, is the brother rat spirit. I mean, the Institute is founded on relationships, right? And so I want to make sure that the staff have the ability to build relationships with those folks that are applying, as opposed to crunching numbers, checking boxes, and things of that nature. So in the interim, we have a solid plan to get through the cycle. Some of those positions and even those that we were repurposing will be posted in late February, early March to try to have folks on board July 1 at the start of the meeting.
Yeah, one last question. As you're looking at historical data and, looking for, I guess, what I call target-rich environments in terms of potential applicants, the nation's changing. There's a lot of migration going on. I would think Florida and Texas would be real prime areas because, I mean, what I'm seeing in Florida is it exploding population-wise. And, they're coming from all over. Is that, do you guys look at that?
You couldn't tee me up a softball better. We 4 times this month at national fairs, and I currently have a staff member down in Texas, in DeSoto, Texas, and that would be our 5th time this year. So I appreciate it. And no other questions, I'm gonna turn it over to Shane.
Right. So I'm sure all of you have heard about, I briefed you in the fall about FAFSA simplification and where we're at. I'm happy to say it's open, FAFSA is open, but it's not without its challenges. So we're gonna be positive, right? We gotta be positive about this because literally nothing is in our control. And I think we want to control it. And I could sit up here and tell you that I'm stressed out about this and I'm worried. But what I'm going to tell you is we have a plan. It's going to be a bumpy few months, but we have a plan and we're going to be okay. So we have continued delays from Department of Ed. Essentially is what this means, and I just want to break it down. Do you remember in the fall, I said that with the FAFSA simplification process, there was already 15 systems the Department of Education had to update, right? I think they've done 1, and that would be the FAFSA. But in all actuality, they opened the FAFSA as a soft launch. It was supposed to be open October 1, did not open until late December as a soft launch. They were shutting it down. We're going through it, trying to fix things live. That's just further delayed as of the 23rd of January. Like I said, it is open. There is 4 main factors that are at issue right now. On January 23rd, Department of Ed said they're going to fix the income protection allowance tables. So that's going to delay the receipt of these FAFSA information further to schools. Second is because right now when a family does a FAFSA, what's happening is it's going to a storage tank, and I'm just going to call it that, right? They're not sending that information to schools. No school in the country has it. Nor can we get in on our federal access site. So not only are they not sending it to us, but I can't go into the new system they've created in order to see the information. That tells me that they didn't have everything built out the way that they should have when they opened the FAFSA. The third piece is that there's still a large portion of families that can't complete the FAFSA. Those without a social security number, there's barriers there. Families that are married filing joint are okay, but there's some confusion on how that's working. There was an issue with the data exchange from the IRS that wasn't working to full functionality. Some of that they have fixed, but it all just accumulates into just a mess. And so we're gonna be feeling that. What that means for us is training is ongoing and it's fluid because it changes all the time. We go through a training, they release something and we learn something new because I think we're all learning something new. That includes the Department of. So what this means essentially is we are completely at the mercy of the Department of Education. I cannot control that. So the Department of Education will typically send out they're called ICER. So that's a FAFSA. Okay, so I'm trying to give you better acronyms to understand. They will give the student information systems, that would be colleague, that's what all the information goes into, a test file. And then colleague would say, yep, test file works with all the new rules and the regulatory updates and all of that. And then they would tell the schools, go ahead and start processing your FAFSAs for your students. They haven't even done that yet. So our student information system can't even test the new files because they don't have them from Department of Education, which means we can't even test. We have that delay in addition. Now, January 23rd, that income protection allowance, that's a good thing for families. What happened is that they did not account for the inflation. So by federal law, you have to account for the income protection allowance and account for inflation, and they didn't. Department of Ed had to decide, are they going to fix that or are they just gonna wait? They decided on the 23rd, they're gonna fix it, which is great. It's good for our families. They didn't tell us how they're gonna fix it or what they're gonna do. So what that means in realistic terms, there's two options. They can either send all the schools the FAFSA information right now, knowing it's incorrect because the income protection allowance tables are not updated. It's option one. We could get those, we could do some tentative offer letters, we could kind of plan, give families something, and then they're gonna reissue all the information, we'd redo all the work. Option two, they further delay when they're gonna release all the FAFSAs to the institutions so they can get it right from the onset. My gut tells me that's what they're gonna do. Their deadline to get FAFSA information to schools was by the end of January. I checked, that is next week. Last I checked, I am not confident they're gonna hit that deadline. I'm truly just not. So the game plan, right? February is probably my gut, which again, next week. So I'm gonna look real good if they come out on February 1. I think mid-February. I really think we'll start getting the FAFSA information, at least either access to it on the federal side, or they will release the test files to our student information system and they'll start letting us do something with them in February. Mid to late. I don't anticipate it being anytime soon. So again, this is all schools. This is not just VMI. We are all struggling with this. If you want a good laugh, you can join some Facebook groups and you'll feel the pain that we're all feeling a little bit. We also have to be strategic because the schools who get this information out the earliest are the ones that are going to be ahead of their enrollment goals. So there's a really fine line with this, which is why I'm telling you that we have a strategy. So I'm not sure how this is going to work because this is like Joe with admissions. This is a baseline year. So one, the FAFSA simplification is supposed to make more students eligible for need-based aid. That's a good thing, but it impacts VMI's bottom line. Kind of don't know where that's going to land. On top of that, you have some families that might lose financial aid. Again, we have a plan for that, but without the numbers, without seeing anything, it's almost impossible. I've met with General Clark's team. It's almost impossible to kind of have a good idea of what this means for institutions. But what we're going to do for families. Supposedly at the end of the month, families will receive what's called a FAFSA submission summary. All that is what they submitted on the FAFSA. It's their summary of what they gave the Department of Ed. That should be a pretty solid indicator of their aid eligibility. So what I am asking families to do is send that in to me. I will look at that, create an estimate of their awards. That way we can get something out earlier versus waiting until February, March-ish. Because honestly, if we do not get the FAFSAs from the feds until February, I still have to wait for colleague to test it. Then I have to test it, and then we have to get it out. That's March, potentially. Some schools are waiting until April, and we just cannot wait that long. We just can't. So we're fortunate at VMI. I know that we have a class number to hit. I know that they want to know what their aid is in order to make those decisions. So as cumbersome as a manual process is that I'm trying to fix, it works really good this year. So we're going to do it manually and try to get this information out to families as quick as possible. Before I go on, I know there's questions. I'd be happy to answer those.
What is the estimate? What is the confidence level you have when you're doing that estimate and just thinking about the expectations that are created?
Yep, absolutely.
No matter how many disclaimers you put on it.
So here's the thing. What I think is going to happen is because the Department of Education has to adjust that income protection allowance table, I don't think they're going to release that information to families, that summary report, until they fix that. Let's say that they don't. So let's do a worst case scenario. If that family gives me that and their student aid index, remember that replaces that EFC, which is how we determine our financial aid awards. That income protection allowance number should actually make that number lower, which means they qualify for more. So if anything, we would then be giving them more aid once we reprocess this. So I have a pretty good confidence in that piece. I am also very cognizant of a budget. So that being said, we're going to be very clear that this is an estimate based off of this summary. We are, this is kind of what we anticipate. Pell eligible or not should really not change with that summary that's coming out. What it also does, it will tell us if they're selected for verification or if maybe they need to do an appeal or something like that, and we can get them going down that process. I can have them complete the forms in advance versus making them wait March or April, we can just kind of get a head start on all of that. So what I anticipate is that that number is probably pretty darn accurate for most. If not, it's going to be lower than it should be. Or I'm sorry, the aid that I'm going to offer lower than it should be, which means we would reevaluate and give them a different number, which should be higher for families to anticipate. But again, this is uncharted. It's really no idea how this is gonna look, but that is our best game plan at the moment.
Is this for all the families, like the second and third year, everybody's gonna?
The focus is the RATs. So typically we do not award our upperclassmen until the final grades are posted in. So the nice thing is I'm really just doing this for the families coming in, and then we'll reshift. FAFSA should be ready to go. Our system should be ready to go. And then the upperclassmen will just be able to operate status quo. So the nice thing is that a lot of them don't know any different right now. We also haven't tried to stress out the upperclassmen. We would like to send something out, tell them to do the FAFSA, but it's been so broken. I didn't want to tell them to go and do this and then, hey, it's not working. It's like, I know it's not working and I don't want to stress you out by telling you to do something that I know is not working. We have a lot of calls in the office about, you know, what can you do for us? What do you know? How do we maximize aid? And I'm having to tell them, we don't know until you do this, but when you get this, send it to me and we're going to work on that. To the Dean and Joe's comment earlier, we're pushing those applications over to the merit scholarships as well. If I'm talking to families and I see that they are really strong, I'm telling them, go for that. If they're a call to duty applicant and they're appointed and they have their ROTC scholarship, their aid is on their account right now. It's on there. I've told them that because guess what? Not all of them are in a reservation or partial reservation and they're appointed. I want them to be reservations. And if that's what gets us ahead with that, that's what I want. So anything I can control, I'm controlling and getting it out there as quick as possible. Questions? Okay, Michelle, will you please go to. Here's where we're at. This is slightly updated just because we did have some really last minute movement. So Superintendent, surprise, I awarded more for you, sir. So 122 applications received, that's unduplicated. Of those, we've made 15 awards. I have 5 more I could do when I get back to my office today. Those numbers are all really strong. 14 males, 1 female, almost all out of state. Like I said, those 13 appointed, those are the ones, they've all been notified. It's on their account. They can see it in post view. We've told them what their next plans are, what they need to do. A lot of them are Texas A&M, Citadel, Norwich. I want them here. So if I can tell them that they are good and we just need to solidify that, that's what we're doing. Comparison with where we're at application wise. We look a little bit slower in January. That's really not surprising to me just because we opened up in October this year versus December last year. If you were to do the math spread from December of 93, October to where we're at right now, we're actually higher than that. So we're seeing that increase there and this will continue. I mean, February, we'll get that next round and we'll see another increase.
If I can add something to your, so earlier talking about Texas A&M and how we didn't really directly compete with them and now we do. I mean, this is why I call it. It was last year that they created a scholarship fund, a pretty sizable one that subsidizes the cost for out-of-state students that want to join their court, where they would pay in-state rates. And so once that was announced and they started to go through a cycle, that's where we saw, you know, them go from 23, 24 on our competitor list on college search platforms to number 3. So that's why this is super important, very critical.
So if you remember, the call to duty fills that gap for room and board. So that means if you're an ROTC recipient with a call to duty, you're only paying the quartermaster charges. $33.96 a year right now. So if you figure $3,400, you add some books in there, they also get the stipends that can help with that. That's huge for us to be able to do that.
This is great stuff. I'm extremely, have you ever thought about those people that are on the border there to have a call to duty scholarship recipient to call those people and say, hey, this is what it means to me to come when I'm at VMI?
My list next week.
What's that?
They're on my list next week.
Okay, all right, okay, that's great.
What we're trying to do is, like I said, it's a partnership with Joe's team. So I have the running list of all the applicants. I check them every other day as best I can. And I go and I see if they've been appointed yet or not. If they've been appointed and they have like told me, or I have from ROTC that they have received the ROTC scholarship. I'm putting it on their account. I'm notifying them. And then next week, what will happen is we'll be calling them and saying, hey, congratulations. Not sure you saw the email. What can we do to help get you from a appointed status to a partial or to a reservation? But also Joe's constantly tracking their progress on that side too. So sometimes it's before I call them, have they done anything before I call and they say, well, I just did my deposit, right? So there's some coordination that's happened between them.
I'm happy to call those people.
Happy to help you. Had you help me.
I mean, I'm serious. I mean, I think it's good stuff, so.
Absolutely.
To hear from an admiral.
Yeah, it sure would
Would
be.
be. It
Yeah,
would be.
absolutely.
Be happy to coordinate with you, sir, if you'd like to.
As long as they don't ask about my, here at, when I was at VMI.
Well, and if anyone wants a career change to financial aid, it's an exciting time over the next couple months, so. Michelle, is that all I have? Thanks. Okay. If there's no more questions, I'll turn it back over to this.
Joe, thank you very much. I think Lester's, oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say Lester's comments were spot on.
Just to follow up on that and to add an exclamation point, we've never seen the collaboration, but I haven't, between your two offices, and that has made a big difference.
As a board member to watch the funnel and how the process actually unfolds from all to a.
Thanks.
So much. Thank you.
I think that's been the biggest difference maker, is kind of getting out of the silos, that existed, having more synchronized approach to this. So it's not uncommon, and Shannon mentioned, our TC departments are involved. Academic departments are involved, conversations and collaboration. Other folks are involved, constant coordination. A lot of talk and a lot of updates that are being given, so we all kind of understand this enrollment management process.
Morning. Before we start the slides, I want to deviate just a moment. A lot of talk, chatter over the last few months about what's going on with the registration registrar, Miller Academic Center. So I wanted to introduce to you our two new leads in those areas. So we got through the fall, right? A little rocky at times, but without a registrar and without a Miller Academic Center director. But I'll introduce them. So Nicole, would you stand up first? This is Nicole Gatliff, who is our registrar. She started December 4th. I think it was about a month or so prior to that late October, early November, you accepted the offer. You knew she was coming, so we started advertising because she had 2 open positions, went through the fall with only 3 people in the registrar's office, as opposed to 5. And so I'm happy to report that not only she hit the ground running and get us through final exams and grades and registration, she also is fully staffed up her office as of January 10th and 11th. So we have a full 5-person team registrar office, and we're got things under control. She's doing a great job. She comes to us from Shenandoah University, where she was the associate registrar and prior to that assistant registrar. So she has a wealth of information and knowledge, experience, and great customer service.
Nice to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm happy to be here, and like the general mentioned, I come with 15 years experience in a registrar's office, as well as working with colleague. So that has been a huge help in this position here. I'm happy to be here and ready to get you whatever information you might need.
Thank you. I might add, she's a hard worker because in the midst of working in the registrar's office, she also earned a bachelor's and a master's degree while she was working full time. So
3 babies, a dog and a snake, and a wonderful fiance.
So,
I multitask very well.
so I don't feel any qualms about giving her extra.
His name is Ernie.
There we go.
Don't bring your pets to the office. And in the Miller Center, our previous director signed at the beginning of September. And so Serge and Allison Pierce joined us on January 8th.
Yes.
She comes to us from West Virginia University, where she had a variety of experience, much of it in academic support, academic advising, including working with the WVA football team in a advisory capacity. So she has the athletic piece also. And she is in the midst of trying to staff up her team And I have to give a shout out to one of her workers, Heather Williams, who is academic support coordinator, basically kept the advisory center running and functioning, and she worked extra hard and extra hours and kept it all together and kept cadets on. But Allison, I'd like to say a few words.
Good morning. I'm also very excited to be here at VMI. As the general said, I was at WVU for about 10 years and wore a lot of different hats, working with student athletes and academic support and academic advising. So I've worked with some real high achieving students as well as some at-risk students. And I'm really happy to work with the cadets here and help. So we are actively interviewing to fill several academic support positions so that we can provide all of the services that the cadets. I'm excited to be here and it's really nice to see all of you this morning.
Thanks, Steve. Hopefully cadets are easier to work with than mountaineers.
You know, so far, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I really prefer the ma'am that I receive here than the I receive that do at times.
I understand. Nothing against WVU, but.
So, and again, one other thing before the slides, back to the question about retention and GPA, high school GPA. So Joe and Shannon were going on. I pulled up the data because it's not in my charts, but just so you get an idea, there's lots of reasons students don't retain, right? That they don't come back as third class cadets. Some of it's in my lane, academics. Some of it's in the commandant's lane. Sometimes it's athletics, right? There's a host of reasons. But in general, academics, high school academics is correlated with retention rates. That is, the higher your high school GPA, the more likely you are to retain. Just to give you a sense, if you're in the last 10 years through the fall of 22, if your high school GPA was above 3.5, the lowest retention rate ever of the group 3.5 to ever was 83%. The highest was almost 96%. Our average is 84%. When you get below a 3.0 high school GPA, in those 10 years, we've had retention rates in the mid 80s, had retention rates around 50%, right? So there's an academic component to that. I will tell you though, when you break the data, that data out with low high school GPAs by race, there is no correlation between race and low high school GPA race. They attrit at similar rates, right? So it's not a racial issue, it's a academic ability, and that's where Allison and her team come in, right? That bring those students in. It's getting ahead of identifying not just with their high school GPA, but where there might be a risk, and then what can we do in the Miller Center to help alleviate and address that risk to give them a chance. When they make it through at that, even at low high school GPAs, if they come back, right, if they get through that first year, they're going to graduate at similar rates to everyone else. It's getting them through the first year, acclimated to college, and you all know a host of challenges in high schools, right? I mean, half the battle is convincing them that when the faculty member says it's due today, it means it's due today. It can't be turned in for grade 3 months from now, like it is in high school. And we don't have a minimum of 50% on every assignment like a lot of high schools do. Right? 0 is the minimum.
Right. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but over 4 years, our attrit rate is similar to other. It's not an outlier. Fair to say.
So when you say attrit, you mean like our graduation rate? Yes. Our graduation rate, if Lee was here, he could answer it more exactly. Our graduation rate is for 4 years in the high 60s, and then 6 years it's in the mid to upper 70s. It's good. It's very strong. It's better than average. It's not. We'd like to get it up to 80%.
Do we have a better attrit rate from third class year to first class year versus losing? In other words, we lose more rats, the freshmen, than most colleges, but then we do better after that.
Then we're fine. Yeah. So when you, that's right. Look at data, the largest percent of our losses in the rat class for all those different reasons. But once they're here as returning thirds, we don't have too much leakage. You know, there's always going to be some, and that could be discipline. Sometimes academics, But often when they're here as a third or a second, if they go away for academics, they're trying to get back. They go and do what they need to do somewhere else and try to get back through a readmission. But then it's the discipline or athletics that drive upperclassmen. Okay. Are you control this one? Okay, there we go. I didn't know if, so here's an update of data. Can you slide that? So this is the running total that I had last year. So this is for just the fall semester RATs. So semester GPA, that's the entire RAT class. It's a little lower than it's been at 2.5. See the matriculation numbers. Census is always the day after drop add. Drop add's about a week long. From the start of the semester, about 7 days. So we matriculated 491. We lost 24 between the start of the semester and 7 later. I don't attribute those 24 to academics. There could be, but that's typically VMI is not for me. Something going on the way the rat line, Hell Week, etc. 451 completed the semester. Some leave during the semester for a variety of reasons. 451, that's about 92% finished. Of those 451, 58 finished the semester on academic probation. For a rat, that just means they have less than a 1.5 GPA, has no credit hour requirements. And 55 of them returned in January. Some did not, some of that 451 did not come back, not for academic reasons, for other reasons. 436 is the count for rats as of yesterday. So 451 finished, 15 didn't come back. 3 of those were on academic. The others, all kinds of reasons. Next slide. Just to give you a sense of academic performance by class and over several years. This is breakdown by each of the 4 classes going back to academic year 1920. This is for the full academic year. So the 4th class, those numbers don't line up with the previous slide because that's 1 semester. Yeah, this is the full 2 semesters. And you see that we have typical thing, lowest GPA in the rat year, and then it creeps its way up, and the average staying about the same. So whether grades are too high or not, argue, but inflation is not existent.
It's good to see we haven't gotten into great inflation business.
Some variability. All right, and so other piece I want to present is not academic, but about services. Ahmad Sheikh, who runs Director of Career Services, couldn't be here today at the conference. So that's great. So so here you have a breakdown. This is for the class of 23. So it's a snapshot from May of 23 through the fall. So we work hard to collect information from our graduating class. We had data for 99.4% of the class, which is extraordinarily high. And I mean, there are schools that are lucky to get 70%. Their graduates responding with almost 100% response.
Those didn't probably or some kind of.
Maybe. They'd have to kill you, right? So 59%, about 30% go into direct employment, 8% grad school, some still seeking, and just a few, 1%, about 1% for that's did not report. The average salary was about 65,500, which is above the national average of 60,000. 14 cadets had salaries over 75,000 and 4 started in the 6 figures. Pretty good for a 22-year-old.
Bob, in those numbers, since half of mission, what's the figure for a second lieutenant that's reported here?
No, the exact, I think it's in the low 50s. Anyone? It's low fifties, I think.
When you start,
Yeah, as a second
it
lieutenant.
was just below fund.
So it's probably 50-ish right now.
So
So
the average is 65, but 200 of them low.
now some of those, and I don't have the breakdown, Teddy, some of those, there's probably some, there's some of those 59% who are reservists in Guard, who are also, right, the employment or graduate school category. But we list them only in the primary so that the numbers add up to 100%. So I know at least anecdotally of a couple cadets who in the past few years who were engineers who commissioning and then in their first class year switched to reserve status from active duty because they're in that six-figure salary. So they wanted to serve, but they also wanted to make $100,000.
They wanted to give and receive.
So they're serving through the military and they're paying their taxes at a higher amount.
I think the other thing about the military is to recognize that there are additional subsistence payments that they get. So they get a subsistence quarters, housing payment. They may get jump pay. They may get some other type of professional pay, which, every year the services will produce a sheet that lets you know kind of what your total pay is, your total compensation is. Soldier, sailor, airman.
They may be reporting.
That's right.
That's what was reflected
Yeah,
here.
yeah. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I can ask Ahmad, get back to you. And I imagine it might be variable based on at what point that responds. If they're responding on May 17th, probably just the 50,000. If they're responding in October when they're already, at their first duty station, they might be reporting.
Well, it should be easier to get the corporate sort of average starting salary, shouldn't it? That's in that orange wedge plus a little bit
Yes,
purple.
to
wedge,
break
right?
it down.
Yeah.
And I can ask Ahmad to do that for reporting to break that up. Next slide. So with the employers, here's some of the notable ones that let's go. So a wide variety of industries, some well-known firms, in a variety of capacities. All of our are highly sought after. It's one of our good challenges, which is we have a lot more demand for our cadets in terms of service or in the civilian sector than we can possibly. It's disappointing to employers, but if we were double the size, I bet we would still get the same kind of employment record. Next slide. Graduate school programs. Here's breakdown of where it was reported, where cadets now are going to grad school. Here's a trend. One thing to point out at 59%, that's a snapshot taken over several months. So that will differ from what we report in May because there are students who have not commissioned yet as of May 16th. So they're going off to OCS in the summer, or they have to go to summer school. So at graduation, we'll be at 52%. And then by the time we get to the fall, we're up close to 60%. Next slide. And for athletes, we had 46 athletes graduated, all 46, 100% reported. Thanks to athletic director, got 100% compliance. 30% commission, 43% employment, 4% grad school. Average salary for those who went into employment was a little bit below the national average at 56,000. That is my report for career services. Unless there's questions.
The Chev reports another thing. What's talk about the income? What's the average debt? Have you been keeping track of how the
it's about 26,000.
So just
average.
We start to keep that one in mind too, isn't it, in relationship to the income? And that's obviously a big factor in terms of why we're a good investment.
That's right. So our ROI is very good because at the cost, even for out-of-state cost, our salaries are low.
Just brief. We saw a little bit of disruption on the administrative and professional faculty through retirements and unforecasted losses. What's your sense of the health of the tenured faculty from a human resource talent management? Are we recruiting and retaining or
So that's a great question. I think for those who have are the full ranks, it's very, very solid. We had a few veterans who left after the first 6 months of COVID, who were my age and said, I'm too old to do this. And so they retired. We always get some that for a variety of reasons. What I've seen and is some of the younger faculty, not big numbers, Jamie, but just more than what I'm used to, who leave for other reasons. Sometimes staying, sometimes getting out of academics. So anyway, we'll always have that. We've lost young faculty who went to private schools with tuition reimbursement programs. And they advanced. But I think some of the emotion of a few years ago is really settled down. We have this faculty advisory council now. It's interesting to watch that, when you people the opportunity because they want the opportunity. It's fun to watch them wrestle with the opportunity. But I think a lot of the emotion is settled down. But I think if there's a concern in faculty, it's just that we hit our numbers for debts and then we get a good quality cadets. Yes.
Thank you, Bob. Well done. Thank you very much.
Dallas is next. One of the things as Dallas comes up to brief that I'll just point out is certainly across a number of areas, as you would expect, we collect a lot of data. We use a lot of data for analysis and we interpret a lot of data. But I think more so than ever, as you're hearing the dean come up, as you're hearing admissions and financial aid come up, more and more we are building the repository of data and pulling it out, analysis on it, so that then we can at least have better understanding of kind of what is happening in institute and how make adjustments as necessary based on partially being informed by what the data is telling.
Good morning. This is a two-part briefing. The first part is just giving you all a look at our preliminary budget assumptions so that you're aware of it. You will make these decisions on tuition and fee increases relative to the operating budget in May. So this is just an early look at some of our numbers where we think things are relative to overall enrollment levels, private support levels, what we anticipate from the state, and that just gives you a look at what we're looking at. So that's the first part of the brief. The second part is a very brief update on government relations activities. So first slide. This is just going through the basic assumptions of looking at the class of 28. So projecting enrollment of 495 cadets enrolling. We are projecting from a budget standpoint the 60-40 mix. We'll see what the actuals all bear out, but just from a budgeting planning standpoint, that's what we're laying in terms of our assumptions. We're projecting an old core enrollment of 1064. And again, those are actuals. The 63 and 36 is actually where we see it, which starts to indicate why we project what we do for the classes. We look for a census enrollment of 1526. That's down 34 from the current class, and that's really attributed to the current third class is just a very, very small class, and we're going to lose a very large first class. So this is the year where we hit the bottom, and I'll show you in the last few slides of the financials. This is the year we hit the bottom of the overall head count for the strength of the core, and just overall enrollment of 1482 across the two semesters. We're projecting a tuition to be an increase of $300 or $302 or 3% for Virginians, and $1222 or 3% for the out-of-state cadets. Net, the actual total increase, since all tuition fees are mandatory, the actual increase to parents is a 2.9% increase for Virginians and non-Virginians. These parameters that we're working with are within what we've communicated to you all previously about our 6-year plans and what we've also presented to the board and or to the State Council for Higher Education Virginia with our 6-year plan. Few just pieces on state revenues, what we're projecting in terms of funds coming in from the state, projecting $29.9 million of funds coming in and operating dollars from the state.
portion of that is maintenance reserve funds, 5.4. We're projecting that for the biennium. Those are new updated numbers, and those have increased a little bit over the previous biennium. This maintenance reserve funding is roofs, windows, building envelopes, concrete, just basic maintenance of plant, not improvements. And then we've got equipment trust funds that is being held flat by the state, but that's utilized to maintain the technology in the labs and at people's workstations. Financial aid, we're projecting the same as 24 at 1.5 million. The legislature still's got its work to do. There's always some deal that gets brokered on affordability or tuition moderation or whatever the term they come up with. So we'll see what shakes out of the legislature, but as what we're looking now, projecting that financial aid from the state to remain the same, the state financial aid package, not to be confused with private support, talking just the state picture here. We currently have in the governor's budget, not in the session, but in the governor's budget, we have these projects. We have the barracks windows project for construction. The governor put that forward. We also have approval for two other capital projects that are funded with VMI funds. So starting those projects and moving those off, also it's going to require all the support, the private money before those get started. But those are some of the priority projects out there. We've gotten approvals from the state. So you'll see there we have the renovation of Crozet Hall and the soccer lacrosse stadium and the Paulette Hall projects are in the governor's budget. So don't anticipate any issues with the non-general funded projects. Those tend to find their way through. We get the approvals done, and then we'll, once we know that's in, start working the fundraising components to it. This is the significant budget assumptions relative to just overall private support. Restricted funds, that's primarily your scholarship funds at 23.1 million. Another 3.3 in unrestricted, which is a nice increase. Continued good management of the endowment, its growth, the strength of that endowment, you start to see the effects of that. The effects of the decisions made in the spend rate some 6-7 years ago. We're seeing net positive effects of that. And then on the athletic scholarship funds, that number, which you add in the development board or the alumni agencies funds, a fund to that, Key Club funds is really closer to 6.6 million. So that gives you the state picture, get a feel for the private support that's coming, what we're projecting. Most appreciative to Mr. Prasnicki, Mr. Deal, their team, what they do, and the communications, the marketing, the major gifts officers, and what they do to raise these funds. The private support component of our budget, as you all know, the one I love the most, General Wins is falling in love with it too, is that $3.3 million of unrestricted money. So all very, very helpful as this lays in the overall picture of the just in terms of what the state, we had a lot of discussions in the last meetings about salary increases. And that we had that 5% that turned into 2% more at 7%. And there's going to be a lot of positive effects of that, but also just understand the financial implications of funding those those pay increases. This is what's in the current budget that the governor's introduced. I don't know where the legislature will go. We're working on these assumptions here with bonuses in Christmas, and then there's a 1% increase actually in the next fiscal year, the next biennium. So it's just the 1% bonus out there in this current budget. And then health insurance costs for VMI, our share of it is going to increase. That's always a significant increase. I think from the overall compensation package for our employees with the benefits that's provided. I'm always happy when the state allows and directs, and they're picking up some portion of it too, but for that to be the employer share, not necessarily pushing that onto the employees always. So anyway, very, very positive news there in terms of just how that those benefit costs aren't necessarily getting more and more expensive for the employees. Some priorities for this budget in fiscal 25. I'd say these are probably some of the guiding thematics of the budget. One is continuing the cost containment strategies through fiscal year 26. I'll show the longer term picture here in a moment. Prioritization of priorities behind the Forging 21st Century Leaders of the new strategic plan. Beginning to roll back out. We've held off and stopped a number of improvements on capital projects, but start rolling out those as that makes some sense as we start to see continued positive trends in the overall enrollment. There's some key pieces of those projects we'd like to start moving out on. And then finally, just our focus on the support towards the athletic budget and its balancing longer term. So this is just the big picture. I'm not going to try and go through each slide. I want to draw your attention to the top line. Total new cadets opening. You can see the 374, 492. This is the class coming in, projecting the 495. And then right on to 515 on forward. And that's what we currently have in our budget models and assumptions. These budget models account for attrition. They account for all those variables. So, but we've got the counting for the 495, and you can see here, this is the 1526 where we hit the overall low core strength. So it's in this budget that we're developing now that we have smallest number of revenue units, if you will. We've just got to get through, and as things start to turn as we go into 2026. You see 1576 and 1699. All this assumes normal retention models and everything else. So any improvements and efforts in those areas obviously affects that in a very positive way. Slide. So
if we go back to remind us what's
so capacity is an interesting debate and discussion.
There's
There's a barracks capacity, there's a capacity in the classroom, there's a capacity in the mess hall. You know, so
which is the most constraining in all of those?
Well, if you ask me,
Well, I just mean open Pandora's box.
I would like to go to 600.
Okay.
No, I think some of the most constraining is actually, and we've gone through this as a board, the right sizing the faculty. And I feel that's put first and foremost right at the front is the delivery of the instruction to the cadets. And so you may be able to house a larger number, and just understanding what those implications are in terms of faculty lines and lining that all up. So we have sort of right size traditionally right around that 510 to 520 range is where our levels were. So right around there is sort of a possible sweet spot, but a lot of analysis and discussion that the team is working through. The General Winds has asked everybody to go back and look at that barracks capacity.
On that one, just for a second, what is barracks capacity? I'm sorry.
Logar, I'll defer to you.
Okay. I wasn't trying to get engaged in something. I know
overall barracks capacity in toto.
Compared to support a 495 objective.
So I think get you a number. We're closer to like it. You know, you probably go overall barracks capacity 1,800 plus.
I thought, because you're showing 1733 there. Yeah, okay. That's what okay. Anyways, I know it's like a more complex question than the one I asked, but just I was more focused.
And I don't mean to be elusive.
No, I understand.
But, I think
there's a lot of variables.
the number of beds is probably not the greatest constraint.
We're right now at 1,000.
What Dallas is talking about and what I've asked them to do is because there's, as he described, it's kind of a spot, right? So when you start thinking about the number of rats that you have that will matriculate, if you go beyond that sweet spot, then you begin to create a stress system where, for example, in the academic space, you have to decide how important is the student faculty ratio. Depending on the major, how many adjunct faculty, for example, the dean would have to bring in. If you go past a certain number, you begin to think about, well, what's the capacity down in Crozet? How many mattresses and beds and uniforms over and above the normal stockage would we have to bring in? So I've asked them both from a financial standpoint, from a barracks capacity student life standpoint, and from an academics kind of come in and report to me, kind of what those numbers would look like if we are able to grow with this RAD class. You don't want to overwhelm the system, because then you've got 3 more years where the trimming occurs. And by the time we get to the first class year, then you're going to have to start thinking about, okay, how do you house a bunch of firstclassmen that exceed that capacity? Be a great problem to have, but it's partly.
I was gonna say this is a very complex, but a nice one to be talking about, actually, given we're a couple of years.
Sure.
So the next slide, this is, I'm not going to draw your attention to try and work this left to right, top to bottom. This is a familiar slide for you all. You saw this last December, or last January rather, we presented and sort of showed some forecasts. The key piece I'm trying to point out here is just the overall fund balance dollars as you start to see in fiscal 26. So the next budget cycle is actually where the fund balance where we're actually drawing on reserves to balance the budget. And then from there, we start to work into the positive domain. I emphasize, as I did previously, these are based upon budgets. These are not actually accounting for the cost saving strategies and pieces. So this is laid out, but there's a number of efforts and work in place to continue to work towards trimming the effects of utilizing fund balance dollars to balance the budget. And so in event, so you just sort of see there in 2026, fiscal year 26, the next budget cycle we bring should be, as we're anticipating, the last time to actually be drawn to balance the budget. And that's going to be totally consistent with the overall core strength. And as I mentioned, so any questions on the financials before I move to government relations? Sir.
Just as a refresher for 2023, which is obviously now the column disappearing on the left. And just trying to remember how everything turned out. We wound up not having to pull from the fund balance to make it.
That's correct, sir. Okay. That's exactly right. I don't want to get too optimistic or too far ahead of my skis, but there's a lot of efforts driving at now it's fiscal year 24, getting after that as we wrap up this year. Okay, the next two slides are on government relations. Just the landscaping, we've talked about this, but just as a reminder, long session in January, 9 March. This sets the budget for 2 years. Legislature will come in next January, they'll meet and they're just going to tinker and do minor adjustments with the budget. You still put some requests in, still work some things, but large the budget set in this cycle here. It's the budget writing session, Democrat leadership in both chambers with the Republican governor. Already starting to see a lot of efforts and at least communications of everybody wanting to come together in a spirit to get some things done. It's going to require a lot of give and take. We're starting to see some of that already in the early parts of the session. 54 new members as a result of November elections. Our effort and our strategy has been to get people to post. And then now that the elections are over, getting general wins to Richmond a lot and frequently and loading up the schedule to get in front of people in key decisions on key committees, as well as meeting some of the new members. And so got a whole nother schedule this next week. We've been down just about every week this session, and we'll continue some efforts there along those lines just to lay out these introductions. Those messages include VMI's priorities, and then lays out the Forging 21st Century Leaders strategic plan. We've got a little 1-page or 2-side that we're handing out to legislators as we go down. So
Do we have that in our materials? Give them.
We'll work to get that to you.
I'd just love to see what we're.
Sure. Then we've got the legislative visit coming up here on the 20th of February. Mark your calendars that. You all will also get invitation to attend in that at the Library of Virginia. These are our current priorities. Seeking the construction phase funding for Moody Hall. We currently have the detailed planning, trying to work with the legislature to get the Moody Hall construction funding in. Other operational requests, the Associate Dean for Academic Support, an internship coordinator, global education support staff, and the VMSDP. This is the old War Orphans. This is a program that's expanded over time. Our cost in this program, it's a waiver of tuition that's provided to survive, war orphans or those that are dependents of veterans with disabilities. Or stepchildren, as the program's going to expand this year. That program for us has grown from $100,000 to $1 million a year of revenue we're writing off. It's much larger than institutions. There's a collective ask from all institutions of education, higher education, to try and get some funding for that program to the tune of some $87 million. So that's a comprehensive request coming from all the college presidents. Sir.
So VMS DEP, is it only in-state cadets eligible for that, or is it all cadets given the circumstances of their family?
In-state and out-of-state.
Okay, thank you.
There's been, even as policymakers are starting to see this, they're starting to realize, not so sure all more. Okay. Looking forward to meeting with everyone in IFP and going through this in more detail, and also in external relations. Sure.
Thanks, Dallas.
Just Dallas, so you said it on the front end, the next meeting would be bringing forward a tuition recommendation.
That's correct.
And so part of it's based on the numerics, but part of it's also, I know you get some feedback from the state over the course of time between now and that particular meeting. So is that still very much your expectation, this cycle as well?
Fully expect to get feedback as a result of legislative session. There may be some additional funding that comes in there towards tuition moderation that can change all that. There's also the politics at play, and this board has been right in the middle of all that with phone calls and everything. So I think we can all sort of anticipate those pressures to continue.
Okay.
Alice, is that tuition flat for all state institutions or just VMI?
No, each board, each institution sets its tuition.
I mean, the state funding for that tuition is that flat for, is that?
Yes, state financial aid, yes, yeah. That's consistent across. It varies on enrollment and other pieces, formulas, but generally speaking, it's about the same level of investment.
Except for charter, how many charter schools do we have in Virginia?
Oh,
UVA. Heck, they get hardly any.
They're tier 3, but they're also going to have an appropriation for state financial aid as well. There's other ways in which some of those schools get treated a little differently, and sometimes with our size of endowment we do as well. But financial aid it's really driving towards need based, and that doesn't matter on the size of institutions. Thank you all very much.
Just real quick, a couple things, some house cleaning things, and then just one other topic that I wanted to mention. Obviously, the remainder of the schedule has been adjusted somewhat. In part, we're moving Inclusive Excellence Committee meeting up because it's going to have to take off. She's flying to Atlanta to receive an award on behalf of the Institute, the Diamond Award from the Not Alone Foundations. Down to receive that. That's some of the efforts recognized for our Inclusive Excellence program. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention real quick, it's in state law under Virginia Code 23.1-615.1, it's called the Enslaved Ancestors Law. And so this came out after 2021. And it has a series of requirements that have been placed on a number of colleges. As one, Longwood is a second college. I believe UVA is in that mix as well. These are colleges that it's at least understood that the contributions of enslaved persons in a part of building institutions drove the development of this state law. So there are a couple of legislative requirements. One is identifying and memorializing to the extent possible enslaved individuals. The second is providing a tangible benefit such as college scholarship. And then the third is to annually submit to the council information on the implementation of the program. To date, the Institute has done a couple of things in these particular areas, and we continue to work others. We commissioned a study from an outside research to document and trace the history of enslaved persons who were either hired or owned by the Institute. 1865. That document is currently in a draft with the final version expected to be produced here in 2024 in the springtime. And then we've also developed a spreadsheet, a data space, if you will, of those known enslaved persons that were associated or part of the Institute. The second thing that we've done is in 2020 of November, the Alumni Association, on behalf of, donated $5,000 in unrestricted grant to the Walker program, which is a nonprofit here in Lexington, Virginia. That program is designed to work to ownership or entrepreneurship for people of color here in the Lexington Rockbridge community. And then the third piece about the annual submission. I didn't report to Chev this year outlining the work that's been done by the Institute and more work that needs to be done as part of the Enslaved Ancestors College Access Scholarship Moral Program. So just wanted to highlight that.
Well, thank you for doing that, because that has come up a couple times, Cedric. We haven't had an update for a while. I know I was just double checking. One of our comment letters actually referred to this. So again, want to thank you for taking the time to update all of us, but also in reaction to one of the comment letters we received.
Question, just a quick question. Scholarships are associated with this program. Do we have any that are active?
I don't believe we do right now.
Okay.
We're looking at a couple of things to include a scholarship and the possibility of some type of memorial that would be established, but that's.
Any other questions, comments, or thoughts? Any final thoughts from you, Cedric, or otherwise we'll move to closed session. Hope all the board members felt like I did. We covered enough, trying to bring more time to this so we don't get rushed. A little nuance here with the going into a closed session in just a second, but I think this is very helpful. And Lester, I'll come back to what you characterized some things. Some of the reports obviously are very different from what we used to get and have seen in the last couple of years. So process. So you know, we're very fortunate to have a couple of representatives of the AG.
Hey, Tom, one thing, just real quick, it's actually mainly for, I know I beat the drum on this all the time. Thinking about the things we talked about today, relationship with the legislature, recruiting, our incredible story out. I'd love to ask if everybody's busy, but with your committee, can we think about this idea that I've put forward a few times about really getting a long-term engagement with a firm that help us with, and I know we've done some things, but I'd love us to like make a concentrated effort, think about really somebody to help us in the long term with getting our message out in a consistent way. Make that request. Sorry.
You want to take a second, do very quick update, but there are some good work down there in the time schedule.
There is going to be a brief, if you will, about some things that are ongoing within to the External Relations Committee. One of the things is the recent establishment of a contract with a contractor that's well known within higher education to do various different types of analysis. The thing that we've asked them to do is to kind of help us understand kind of where our holes, where our gaps are in our swing with respect to our marketing and our footprint and the knowledge of VMI, both across the Commonwealth and also across the nation. So we want to understand where our holes are first, and then incorporate the need for a marketing firm, a communications group, to help us to kind of shore up those efforts. So we'll talk more about it.
That's awesome to hear.
Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? If not, again, let me thank all those from the Institute, the foundation, and others that were here to join us today. And I know we'll see many of you in different committee meetings, but thank you. I'm just going to now take the steps to move into closed session. I think, as I mentioned, we have representatives from the state's AG office to give us a brief on a few matters, actually. And in closed session, I'll introduce our guests in a little more detail then. But for the moment, at this time, it's 10:13. And I entertain a motion that the board go into closed meeting to discuss first consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2-3711A7, pertaining to actual or probable litigation of the. And secondly, consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2-3711. A8. Ask for a motion, please. Motion second.
I'll take a look.
Opposed? Then we're in closed session.
Might say that if we're deciding.
Just like the property tax would go up in Graham, pay for the vacation. It did.
I'm old, I'm the Eddie.
I would be worse than this. It would get much more expensive. There you go. Pretty impressive.
Closed session is now ended and the board is now an open session. It is now 11:37. During its closed meeting, the board discussed only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements in your Freedom of Information Act. And only those public business matters provided in the motion convening the board in closed session. I'll ask for a motion to certify the closed meeting.
So moved.
So moved. And we'll need is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And we'll need a roll call. Call vote, please.
Mr. Adams.
Agree. Yes.
Mr. Edgar.
Aye.
Mr. Fain.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
Gottwald.
Aye.
Mr. Inman. Dr. Johnson. Mr. Joustra. Ms. Lord.
Aye.
Mr. Marsh.
Aye.
Mr. McKnight.
Aye.
Ms. Mobbs.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Ms. Todd.
Aye.
Williams. Ms. Watson.
Okay. Right, I think we are now fully back in open session. Again, there were no decisions or action taken, and I'll just look for a motion to adjourn the meeting and move on to our committee meetings. Any opposed? We'll move to committees. Now, just as scheduling, Bill, did you? I was gonna try to move the lunch back. Just so we can buy ourselves a little bit more time.
First set of committees should start at 11:30, which was 8 minutes ago. Run till 12:45, lunch from 1 to 2, and then committees at 2:50 to 3:45, and then third set at 4 to 5:30.
What time will we finish?
12:45, but the lunch doesn't start, Teddy, till 1, so, yeah. That's